right. So welcome everyone. My name is Un Lee. I'm the executive director of the Dream Unfinished. For those who are not familiar, the Dream Unfinished is an activist orchestra. We use classical music as a vehicle to engage audiences in dialogues around social and racial justice. And we have certainly been doing that in the concert hall for a number of years, but partially from obvious COVID restrictions and partially because we really want to be where the people are. We have been embarking on this web series and trying to use this platform as another space where we can be having these dialogues around current issues and how they play out in classical music. So I'm joined by our master production manager, Sarah Overton, Yet Unheard. So these are lesser known, but not lesser deserving masterworks by underrepresented composers. When I've been trying to do some research around programming for Native American topics, there's actually an abundance of music, but it's not by Native American composers. But we should note that Native American composers have a history and there is a body of work. And there's one composer in particular that TDU is very excited about, who's a living composer. And Sarah, I think you're going to share a little bit more around Juantio Becenti.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk a little bit about Juantio Becenti because his music is so it's so interesting. It sort of reminds, it has a lot of these like Shostakovich influences, a lot of native influences, and you know, he's just really exciting in terms of you know, the things that he's putting forward. So I want to screen share a little bit so that we can kind of take a look at who he is as a person before we go on to looking at his music. So let's see. And can you see this? Great. Yeah, so you know, he is a composer who has, you know, just really been composing all of his life. You know, the music was just, you know, within him. So he was primarily interested in piano when he began, but then later moved on to composing and you know, just really forming his way. Here is a picture of him and just in his southern Utah, you know, where he kind of grew up and did a lot of his growing up. So it's really exciting in terms of you know, just how he presents himself as a musician who is, you know, also just kind of living and working and trying to project some of his Native American heritage within his music. So this is a great example of one of his pieces. It is a string quartet called The Forest at Dawn. And I want to share a little bit about this music, but before we do, I think we've got some terms to define for folks. His music isn't necessarily major or minor, and when we say major, we're thinking of like happy music, predominantly really happy music for our non-musician friends.
I wonder, Sarah, if it's worth, like, I'm a terrible pianist, but maybe if I just hop over and play a C major chord so people have a sense. Yeah. So major being something like, oh, this is so out of tune too. So
a little bit more uplifting, a little lighter, a little happier, and then and if you would be so kind to play a minor scale, a C minor scale. Right, a little darker. Then when we talk about there being in major or minor, it's definitely light or it's definitely dark, right? So Juantio Becenti's compositions they can sometimes get a little bit atonal, meaning that it's not definitely light or it's not definitely dark. It's somewhere in between. It kind of mixes all of these sounds together. So you'll hear a little bit of that in this piece, The Forest at Dawn, the string quartet composition. And he particularly says about this composition that this piece is about the light, specifically the descent into darkness before the light. I spent a week in a mountain residency in a cabin with no electricity in 2009. It was strange, sometimes frightening, but also a much needed experience. eventually he says that it's an optimistic piece with sights set on the future. So let's hear a little bit of The Forest at Dawn. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one last time here for folks. Great. Okay. Let me try this one more time. I want to make sure we can, got it. Okay. So I'm gonna pause it there. It's such an exciting, just a really exciting, like a lot of forward motion there, a lot of just really wonderful sounds coming from those instruments, sounds that you wouldn't usually expect from a violin, viola, cello, or bass, or violin, viola, or cello. And do you have any initial thoughts, just kind of on that piece and hearing it?
Well, and I loved actually where you ended, or when you ended, I should say, Sarah, because it goes from the what I think people would call like minor or almost like an edgy sort of tonality and harmony to right where you just stopped was when, like, if we're leaning into the composer's metaphors, like the darkness shifted into a light and like we were getting the happier chords. And yeah, I mean, it's also just the, this section, I mean, people should definitely listen to the longer work. It's as you could probably see on YouTube, it's like a 26-minute piece. And it goes through just so many different moods and sort of like landscapes that can take place. But that particular section, it's so muscular, like it's very athletic writing. I mean, I can only imagine, like I'm sure you as a cellist are thinking like I would be so tired playing all of these like moving notes.
Yeah, it's funny. I picked up the score and I tried to play a little bit of it just before we got on today, and I was like, "Oh, I'm exhausted." I mean, my forearms are tired. It's a lot of like back and forth and over. But what's unique about it, even though you have a lot of that repetition, that undergoing engine, you're engaged the entire time. There are so many small changes in each line. For any of the instruments, that it's really neat just to kind of you have to be with the music. You have to be really in every moment. But I mean, just so exciting in that, and just kind of the thinking of how we keep the musicians present that I don't see really in a lot of composers. So I'm excited for that, especially.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the web episodes or so far has been like all the music that TDU wants to program eventually, especially like when we get back into having in-person performances. And this is definitely a piece that's on the top like priorities of stuff that I would want to make sure people are aware of. And if others are interested in programming this, so as we'll share in the articles and links as we always do, the article that Sarah had shared on from the Navajo Times. So from our understanding, Juantio Becenti is a bit of a secluded composer, I think is the right word for it. We do have his contact information. So if people are interested in procuring the sheet music, please reach out to us, send us like a message or leave a comment on YouTube. And then we can follow up, and because the composer does provide PDFs for the sheet music. And if you're interested in supporting the development of Native American composers more broadly, so Juantio had also participated in the Grand Canyon Music Fests. They have this apprenticeship program for Native American composers. So we'll drop that in the link as well. But I think we're going to close it here. So just really wanting to thank you, Sarah, for joining me, and thanks to folks who are tuning in. And we will be back with more episodes, I think with a slightly different lineup next week too, in terms of hosts. But again, the same topics of classical music, different sorts of social issues and how those two may intersect. And we look forward to having you tune in and join us then.
All right. Thank you again, everyone.